Hello, everybody, and welcome to this brand new edition of NEWSPASTY with me, Johnny Vedmore, your host. And who we got here? Well, we got Peter Lerner. And who's Peter Lerner? Well, he looks like a nice guy, doesn't he? What's that behind him? Oh, it's an Israeli flag. Where's the Hamas flag to equal it out? Oh, no, I see. He's a member of the IDF, the Israel Defense Force. He's a spokesperson for them. Look at him. He's so clever. He's so clever. He knows how to say things in certain ways. Don't we like that? Don't we like it when people say things in certain ways that means we're tricked? We're tricked. Fooled. No, that depends. If you know it and you know that happens, and you should be sensitive to that whenever you're talking to someone like this. And this guy is top notch. Peter Lerner, he's top of the grade. If you want someone who's going to feed you something, this guy is going to feed you something. Let's see what it tastes like.
Yesterday, during the afternoon, we conducted a strike against Ibraim Byari. Ibraim Byari has 2 decades of experience in killing Israelis.
I bet you, Peter Lerner's got 3 decades experience in killing Palestinians. I mean, just saying, you've got to look at it. I don't want to be too relative with my arguments, but there is a point to be made that these are both relative to each other. It's a guy who's got a couple of decades or a few decades experience in killing the other side, saying that this guy's got a few decades experience killing our side.
A senior commander of the Hamas terrorist organization who had pre-positioned his capabilities within the civilian arena, within Jabalia. And indeed, we conducted a strike against him. And what we can see is...
That's really interesting. Straight away, he's saying he's situated himself inside the senior Hamas commander, Ibrahim or something like that. It was. I don't want to just randomly say names, and it might just sound like I'm racist, but because I might get it all wrong. I might be saying something else in another country, in another language. I do not know, but I don't really care. I don't really care. As you've noticed with NEWSPASTY, and some people notice more than others, I do not care so much about being offensive. No, this is what this program's about. It's being able to look at things from all angles and be a bit of offensive every now and again to people who are being offensive to us. And I suppose that's the people who are propagandists. And who better to examine as a propagandist than Peter Lerner, this high up IDF spokesperson who's here telling us that yes, this guy positioned himself within children, but we needed to take him out.
That in the position where we took him out and engaged him with his surroundings, supporting terrorists.
Engaged? No, to engage there has to be a two-way. They did a missile strike. That's a boom, massive, enormous crater in the ground, every building round destroyed, 100, 200, 300 casualties or something to get one guy. And that is not a two-way street, It's not like they could respond after that, could it? Is it? It's not like they could respond.
The people that conducted the attacks, what we can see in the footage is that the building actually collapsed into the tunnels that they are operating in.
That is amazing. Right. There's no doubt that the Hamas have had to build an underground network. That's true. But that's a crater in the ground made by a missile strike. Proof that that's tunnels, because it's a crater in the ground, is just crazy. That's the Israel saying, well, we could just make loads of craters in the ground to tell them that we've hit tunnels because look how deep it is. No one will think that a missile causes a crater in the ground, of course, because why would they when we got someone like Peter Lerner who's so believable up front?
Indeed, a huge challenge for any military that is operating, and we are conducting our strikes against Hamas, their leadership, their terrorists. And specifically, this is the reason why for now 3 weeks we've been asking the people of the north to go south.
Colonel, did the IDF know that
they've been bombing everything, but they're telling the people in the north to go south? So what would stop people who are guilty also fleeing south? People are going to strike because they know if they're saying they use civilian cover, then they'll go down to the south and they'll still have civilian cover and they'll be able to enact operations. What they're trying to do is push people, as many people, out of combat, people out of the realm of combat that was coming, or is happening now in Gaza.
Was a risk of civilian casualties?
We know that Byari was hiding specifically in Jabalia. We know that they had intentionally positioned all of their capabilities, their command and control. We know that from these times,
they know that they put them there. They know they're saying we know they put them there. We know they surrounded themselves by civilians, and yet they took them out anyway. That is what's called a war crime. That is a war crime. That is killing civilians, not caring, indiscriminate. This is not about someone's right to exist. When you kill, this is just vengeance. And what else is it? I think you know.
Types of places he launched his attack against Israel on the 7th of October. The civilian casualties of this war are truly tragic, and we see that this terrorist organization that has no regard for human life are intentionally putting the people at risk. We are going out.
Agreed that they are putting people at risk, and agreed they're doing terrible things, but in return you're putting people at risk. You're putting more than people at risk. You're killing people. Oh my god. And you're doing more murder than they were doing. So it's just vengeance begetting vengeance, isn't it? This is always the way it is. It always ends up with relative arguments.
So with our way to try and limit that. And indeed, they utilize tunnels. They utilize their attack capabilities in order to conduct this. They're even proud of it. They distribute the footage extensively, showing.
Which is exactly what the IDF do. The IDF show footage. But what's happening here? Is this actually the Sky News showing these tunnels, or is this IDF showing these tunnels? So the Sky News decided that they're going to help the IDF promote any of their lines by showing related images and if movies and media. And if so, did they coordinate this beforehand?
How they've built these tunnels beneath ground. And it's not just beneath ground, it's beneath the people of Gaza. This is the challenge we're facing. We have to take them out. They have to be removed from control of Gaza. That is our responsibility.
Well, it's definitely not their responsibility. It's what they're choosing to do as an act of vengeance. And it was a terrible thing that happened at the beginning. So, I mean, people do things, and states and other things get their ability to do these sort of things by a terrible thing happening. But then they commit terrible things, and to somehow sanction the one thing. Oh, look, the one thing's we get. It's all right. We can sanction our murder by the fact that we can excuse it because they murdered us first. Is this going to go on forever? Is this going to go on forever?
Explain to me, Colonel, how it is that what happened yesterday is not against Article 51 of the Geneva Convention that says prohibits indiscriminate attacks, which are those that may be expected to cause incidental loss of civilian life.
Right. Okay. Geneva Convention, Article 51, protection of civilian population. Among others, the following type of attacks are to be considered as indiscriminate. An attack which may be expected to cause incidental loss of civilian life, which is what he's saying happened, injury to civilians, which we know happened, damage to civilian objects, which we can see happened, or a combination thereof, which would be excessive in relation to the concrete and direct military advantage anticipated. Exactly that. They're no longer playing by the rules of war. Neither side has, and nor have their allies for a very long time. There is no Geneva Convention because no one holds anybody who it isn't politically expedient to hold to account, do they? They just don't hold people to account unless it has political expedience attached to it and some sort of relative veneer of justice.
There are also conventions that identify the need of military necessity. And I would say, if Byari given the chance, do you think?
So he's saying that because there's other conventions, they can ignore the Geneva Convention, Article 51, protection of civilian population, and kill civilian population. That is an argument that could have been used by the Third Reich, isn't it? Really easily. I bet you if you go back and see what they argued under League of Nations, and what some of the arguments in Nuremberg were, I think you would find some of that.
He would butcher and murder and massacre Israelis again? I don't think there's any question that any decent person would understand. And therefore, there is indeed military necessity in order to take him out of the equation, to make sure he can never wield that sword of death above anybody's head again. And this is why the Hamas are utilizing the civilian arena, and it's specifically for you to ask me that question. And we operate out of the ideas and the principles of both distinction, but also military necessity, and weighing up the proportionate responses.
They don't weigh up proportionate responses because that's not a proportionate response. Listen, they're already moved in to Gaza. They say they're going to go street to street. That's what they're going to do. They're going to go and they're going to clear all the areas. That means they would come across this guy eventually anyway. They have no need to put the life of civilians at risk, or kill civilians, or destroy civilian infrastructure, or the multitude of other nasty criminal activity that has been committed. But this is endgame. This is endgame, and this is Mr. Propaganda. And I'm surprised Kay even brought up Article 51, and that she didn't just like skirt over a lot of this, because it is like Sky News and others are trying to, of course, excuse IDF action, not Israel's people and what they want. They're not really reporting much of that. They're reporting what they want you to see, but really what they're doing is trying to excuse these military actions to the wider audience. They are a PR tool. Sky News is a PR machine for this.
Of those military needs.
I must interrupt you there, if I may. I mean, you must have known, you have some of the best intelligence in the world.
He said they know.
You must have known that there would be incidental loss of civilian life, which
he
is
already
against
said.
Article 50.
He already said it, but you didn't bring it up to him at him when he said it.
One of the Geneva Convention, and yet still you went ahead.
Okay, I don't know to say that we knew the extent, and I would also be very, very cautious.
We knew the extent, so they knew, they just didn't know the extent. They didn't know the extent. Oh, yes, okay. So there was like 500 people hiding above him, or living above him, and but we didn't know the extent. We didn't know the extent, did we?
Just in judging and coming to any... I noticed that you haven't mentioned numbers, because we don't know the magnitude of how many of those were actually Ibraim Byari's cronies, those
yeah, and how much. So we don't know how many of those children were his cronies. That is, that's what basically. Although those women and children could have been working for him, so we don't know that. And because we don't know what we don't know, means we can make things up, can't we? We can make things up. Do you know that? Do you know who did this? Oh yeah, no. So we're gonna just go to war.
Terrorists, those that conducted the attack against us on the 7th of October. So, of course, when we've been calling for the last 3 weeks for civilians to evacuate, and happily we've seen that a huge amount of people...
Happily, they've seen people leave their homes and watch them destroyed. Think about that. Will you please think about Mr. Lerner and what he is saying? He's saying something that is completely and utterly barbaric, and we're watching barbaric scenes. People's houses, livelihoods, whole life, families brought up in the same place, living in the same place, all just destroyed. But it's okay, because he gave them a phone call and told them to get out. We're going to destroy your stuff.
Over 1 million people have listened to us. We need to ask ourselves, and why did Hamas discourage them from evacuating? Why did Hamas want them to stay in the civilian arena? Why has Hamas been threatening?
It's, look at this. This is destruction. Every time one of these comes in, loads of people in these areas just basically die straight away. Loads more injured. This is just, how can you give people in a building a call, and all of the people outside, what are they going to do?
and operating in a way that intentionally puts them at
Have
risk.
you ever missed a telephone call?
We are trying to get them out of harm's way.
Look
and
at
indeed,
that.
the strikes
destruction
in the civilian arena against Hamas, against their infrastructure, against
the strikes in the civilian arena. He's saying the strikes in the civilian arena, admitting fully well they're striking within the civilian arena, knowing that means there's going to be incidental loss of life.
Their tunnel, against their command and control positions, they're going to continue because we are
there you
determined
go.
to destroy Hamas and dismantle.
We're going to continue striking in the civilian arena. That's what he's saying. He's saying openly that they're going to continue striking in the civilian arena. What does that mean? It means civilians will die. Incidental. That's incidental.
Regime, they cannot be permitted ever again to wield the power of a government that utilizes all of the tools of government to carry out the atrocities that they did on the 7th of
wow, you know, again, relativism.
Of October. So indeed, the civilian arena is the part of the tragedy that Israel is facing here. But it is a tragedy, nevertheless, on the shoulders of Yahya Sinwar, who is the mastermind of this massacre, and Mohammed Def, who is the operator. So these are the people we need to ask, how many people are they willing to sacrifice?
How many people are they willing to say? How many people are you willing to let me punch in the face before you say stop punching him in the face? Come on, how many people? I got a line of people, and I'm gonna punch each one of them in the face because you're making me do it. Which people? I don't care. Whatever people I can find, get them up, punch them in the face. That's what I'm gonna do.
How many people
Limited
are
time
they?
and so much to get through. We had Dr. Omar Abdul,
Did you notice that they cut him off? They were expecting him to go down that route, and it's awkward for them.
Pediatric neurologist who's here in the UK on the programme earlier on this morning. He says a child is dying every 8 minutes, but he went on to make this suggestion that from the injuries he's seen, white phosphorus is being used.
Okay, here we go. I mean, he has to look down at his notes quickly because he's expecting these questions to come up, because these questions are going to keep coming up. You realize that this is what they're doing in the actual theater of war is illegal by international law. Large parts of Israel are illegal under international law. This is how we've got here. The creation of Israel really was illegal under international law, but they created a new international legal framework to be able to do that. Now that's pasty. That is high level pasty. The creation of the UN and the creation of a load of bodies around to write the legal framework to let these things happen, and it be the establishment side. It's an administrative version of the of fascism being put upon everybody. And what the people in the top realize as soon as they get in power in any ideological political system, they look at it and they say, well, wait a minute, if we're in power, why don't we take everybody's money and stuff slowly until we've got everything, because we're the ones who can do that. And then they do, and then you get communism or a form of it. It's how it works. We got all of these different things and they all work in unison, but this is fascism. This is the over 75 years of creating international legislation so that they can get away with international war crimes. So those in power can get away with things that should be war crimes, should be illegal under international law, but international law is being made a mockery of.
In Gaza, is it?
That's a very professional observation from London, from the comfort of his sofa. I would be very I'd be very cautious in trying to judge any of the professional activities that are taking place. The IDF operates within the realm of the laws of armed conflict, the tools.
No, they don't. It's very clear that they don't. They've said they don't. They said they'll continue to strike in this civilian arena. That will lead to incidental loss of life. It will be against Article 51, but the international community will ignore it because this has to be done. This is part of the agenda. They've got to sew up all of the little wounds, all of the gaps, stop them up, get it up, plug it up. Plug up everything so they get everything. Plug up everything.
We utilize are in accordance to the international humanitarian law.
Is it being used?
Challenge and international humanitarian law does not prohibit
phosphorus being used.
This is what you get with IDF spokespasty. Is that you have to ask the same question over and over again, and you won't get the answer right until they've given you a load of bump, and then people picking it apart later on. Well, they've already got annoyed by something else you said earlier, and they've not heard the proper answer. But listen, they kind of tell you at the end of each one.
Okay, the laws of armed conflict do not prohibit the use of.
Is it being used?
So there you go. They tell you at the end. The laws of armed conflict don't prohibit this. So is it being used? The laws of armed conflict. That's not an answer. Is it being used?
And I don't have any instances where it has been used, but it can be used.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you for
but it can be. Oh, yeah, look at this.
It's not been used. I'm going to take your word for it, sir. You're on the ground.
Wow, have a look at this. Now, this is just deep, dark collaboration between the media and IDF spokesman. I mean, you could just say, okay, you could just stop him being IDF. Let's pretend he's not IDF. Let's just say he's global government. He's one of the many arms of the global government. Israel is a unit within the global government, and this is a global agenda to take over the world for globalism. And Gaza and Palestine has never fitted into that, along with other nations who aren't ready to go global at the moment in their opinions, and I've read that many times. And Burley is the PR firm employed, of course, by Murdoch and others to do this and to plug up Peter Lerner here. But listen to what they just did. Listen to what they just did. Listen to how open it is. Listen to how this is them conspiring on live TV to get rid of the question. She asks him the question. He says quite openly something that says that he answers by saying basically, we are allowed to use it if we want to, which should open up further questions. Instead, she tries to close it down herself. This is not journalism.
Instances where it has been used, but it can be used.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you for the clarification. You're saying it's not been used. I'm going to take your word for it, sir. You're on the ground.
He's even saying, he's giving her clues. He's saying, no, I can't confirm. I'm saying I can't confirm that. I'm not saying. He's purposely iterating that it's not. He can't deny it. That it could be used, and she should question further for that. She should question. This is madness. The fact that she's the one going, no, then don't ask the question. Don't answer the question. Don't. She's a journalist. The journalists, right? Journalists, they ask questions. They look for every opportunity to ask the questions that mean they'll find the answers that the other side may want to hide. And here, she asks the questions, and when he gets caught with his pants down, she pulls his pants up for him. And she does his belt up, and she says, no, go on now. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. We're on the same bloody side. What are you doing? Let's watch her pull his trousers up again. Here we go. Okay, pull this man's trousers up. Don't get anything stuck on the way.
Do not prohibit the use of.
Is it being used?
Explosives. And I don't have any instances where it has been used, but it can be used.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you for the clarification. You're saying it's not been used. I'm going to take your word for it, sir. You're on the ground.
Okay,
so you're saying it's not being used.
But I would say there are legitimate ways to utilize different
I asked you if it was being used. You said it's not. I'm going to take your word for it, sir. What's
the
next
my God. So do you see? She didn't do it just once. It's not an accident. She did it 4 times. She did it 4 times. He's even laughing. Look at his face. It's unbelievable. He's looking at the next question. He knows she's going to ask him. He does this before she asks him every question. They look down at the question because they're working together. The Sky News here and Kay Burley are just doing PR for Israeli Defense Force. That's all they're doing. They're running PR. She had to get him. She had to say 4 times. 4 times. Was it 4 times? We're going to go back and see how many times Kay Burley gets him to this is unbelievable. She is pretty unbelievable.
International humanitarian law.
Is it being used?
Is a huge challenge. And international humanitarian law does not prohibit
phosphorus being used.
Kay, the laws of armed conflict do not prohibit the use of
is it being used?
She's asked the question 4 times.
No, I don't have any instances where it has been used, but it can be used.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, that's not clarification, but this is the point. So she's asked him like 4 times, has it been used? And once he stuttered and made it clear, but he said no at one point. No, I can't give you any specific like example of where it's been used.
You're saying it's not been used. I'm going to take your word for it, sir.
You're okay, on the ground. That's okay. You're on the ground.
It's not being used.
But I would say there are legitimate ways to utilize different munitions.
I asked you if it was being used. You said it's not. I'm going to take your word for it, sir. What's the next phase of this war?
Okay.
I think
what a surprise. 3 times, just like in the Bible. They denied him 3 times. Denied the white phosphorus. She denied the white phosphorus was being used 3 times. She should be the one asking the questions. She's not telling him not to answer the questions. When have you ever seen a journalist tell someone that? Say, no, you don't say anything more. Don't say anything more. You've said the one thing that is convenient for me. Shh. Don't say anything more. No. You said it now. You said it, and that's what we want to hear. So don't say anything more. When have you ever seen that happen? This is what complicity looks like. This is what conspiracy looks like. They've had to have loads of people behind the scenes organize this interview so it goes as well as possible for the IDF and makes them look as good as possible. Now,
the only end game of this war will be when Hamas cedes the ground. I mean, as I said, they could end it today. They could come out with and say no more deaths, please. But unfortunately, we know that they won't do that. They have no regard for human life, and they are willing to sacrifice all of the people of Gaza.
And the Israel Defense Force seem like they're quite happy to also sacrifice all of Gaza because it suits their agenda. So what does that mean? They've got this excuse because Hamas is willing to sacrifice, so it's okay for them to bomb every single home, every single person, kill children, all over the place. Okay, it's fine for that. It's fine for that because we could just say that same sentence over and over again.
Our goal is to remove them, destroy their capabilities, bring home the 240 Israelis and foreign nationals that are still being held hostage by Hamas. That is our goal.
I wanted to ask you about that, Colonel. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, if I may. Reports more hostages.
Right. How is any of that going to bring hostages home? If they're destroying and just bombing and, what they're saying, they got civilians. They're going to hide under civilians. What civilians? What do you think they're going to hide under? Maybe they're going to surround themselves with hostages. So every time you kill one of them, you're killing some of your own hostages, and you know that's happening, but you don't care. It's sacrifice for an ideology, for a political ideology. Political Jewish class has taken control, and the Jewish people are not. They are not all united behind these actions and this being done in this way. They are not. If people try and make you think that they all are, then that's because they've got to you with all of this propaganda.
Could be released today. How credible is that, or is that just another false dawn for the families?
So we've seen a lot of psychological terrorism that Hamas has been conducting around the
Oh
issue.
wow! Please don't start talking about psychological terrorism, because this is what I would describe a load. I mean, systematic psychological terrorism has been going now mainstream since at least 2010, and this is all fifth generational warfare stuff. No one can know what is happening, who is really doing what, and what's going on the ground. And the more they learn how to utilize fifth generation warfare, the more you'll see it happen.
Hostages. We've seen the IDF's efforts in bringing Ori Megidish home, rescuing her. Our efforts are ongoing. I think there's a lot to be said about the hostage issue. I think primarily Hamas are responsible for their well-being, and we expect the International Committee of the Red Cross to have immediate access to them to assess their well-being. Unfortunately, we don't trust a word Hamas is saying. We can't trust
I'm not sure
an organization.
I'm not sure they're going to trust you either. And I don't trust you, nor do a lot of other people, because of how many lies you tell and how the media is so complicit with those lies. I still can't believe what Kay was doing there. That's insane, Kay, Burley. You stopping him from answering the question because he's going to answer it in other words, in other terms. And you're paid to stop that happening. That's bad journalism, the worst.
A terrorist army that butchers babies in their bedrooms for any word that they say.
Colonel,
wow. Well, again, relativism, because if you have incidental loss of civilian life, that includes babies in their bedrooms, doesn't it? Murdered.
Final thought. If I know, I appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning.
Oh my God.
So I saw your report. We've had, over the last week, we've seen an ever increase in the humanitarian access that is going into Gaza. I think that there are confirmed reports that there is some medical assistance that Egypt is extending to people. And yes, this is part of the reality of war. There needs to be humanitarian access.
And there's going to be a big but coming here, isn't there? I think there's going to be a big but. And can you imagine how desperate people are on the borders and the camps? Can you imagine?
We understand that. The Americans have also requested that we facilitate, and we are facilitating it. Within the understanding that Hamas will most likely abuse that as well.
It's war!
Leave it there. Colonel, thank you,
you must
for
leave
taking
it
the time
there.
to join us this morning. Thank you.
Colonel, you must leave it there, because if we talk anymore, people are definitely going to work out that we're on the same team. And that team, what team is that? Well, that's the Pasty Defense Force. Globalism United, isn't it? This is Globalism United. Disgusting.